Okay, I'm back and I'm about ready to go to bed very soon. Um, I was a little sick in my previous videos. That's why my delivery wasn't at its best. I still am sleepy, but I feel like the information I've received, I have to go and share this with you all. Here I go. But before I get started, let me just add to urge you to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you're kept up to date. Um, I just want to say that and before I get started. So, with no further ado, I shall get started. In 2015, China, France, Germany, the UK, the European Union, Russia, Iran, and the USA drafted what was called the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, known as the Iran peace deal. And as critical as I was of Barack Obama's presidency, this treaty was probably the most successful part of his presidency. It was the most. It was the treaty that Obama gets credit for. The best thing he's ever done during his 8 years as president was to work on a peace treaty with Iran. And I make no apologies for that. Donald Trump came in to appeal to his neocon base, his warmongering base, which is a juxtaposition because Donald Trump promised to get us out of all these neocon wars and all that. He did kind of make emphasize or hint at it, and there was an anti-war faction of that Trump coalition. Some of the libertarians and paleo conservatives who do not see eye to eye with the establishment Republicans who never met a neocon war that they didn't like. The establishment Republicans who gets an erection every time the thought of droning takes place or the thought of waterboarding takes place during the Bush Cheney years, that sort of thing. Um, as I said, there's a faction within the conservative movement that they're tired and fatigued of this war nonsense. And I will call anybody an ally if they're opposed to war. But Donald Trump walked out of this treaty. He walked out of this treaty to appeal to the evangelical Christian base, the Christian right, to appeal to the secular neocon establishment Republicans, and also to appeal to the ultra right wing Likud government in Israel. That's what it came down to. And Joe Biden, with many faults that he had campaigning, nothing will fundamentally change, he promised. Well, today I feel magnanimous and I'm going to defend Joe Biden. One of the few times I'm going to defend Joe Biden. And there's hints that the United States is about to return back to the peace deal with Iran. And anything that can ease tensions between the United States and Iran will be a good thing. Now, this joint comprehensive plan of action, when it was drafted in Vienna back in 2015, went into effect in 2016, using the International Atomic Energy Agency to basically work it out so Iran phase out of using their technology for nuclear weaponry. In other words, the purpose of this treaty was for Iran to use their nuclear power and energy for peaceful purposes. And in exchange, these frozen assets that the United States acquired, it was like $150 billion that belongs to Iran. People keep on saying, well, the United States is just giving Iran money. No, it's their money. It belongs to Iran. And after the Islamic Revolution in 1979, the United States seized assets. Now, was it right back then? Um, I would say maybe yes. However, Iranian people are suffering today, and we have isolated them. We have put criminal sanctions against them, not allowing medical supplies, equipment into the country, isolating them. And you know what? The people of Iran and the government of Iran will moderate if the United States ends this unnecessary rattle sabling with Iran. I'm no fan of the government of Iran as it stands right now. The only government Iran had that I was a fan of in recent times would have been the left wing government that existed prior to the CIA coup in 1953. Can I think of the name of the gentleman? Mohammed, and I cannot think of his last name, but he was a secular left wing leader. He nationalized the oil companies, wanting to use the proceeds from the oil to go and give to the people. The United States did not like that. And plus, he wasn't particularly hostile toward the Soviet Union, which basically triggered the US and other Western allies. And in 1953, that government was toppled and the United States put in the Shah. And we need to remember that the Ayatollah Khomeini that took over in 1979 was an early supporter of the Shah, by the way. You won't get that too much um, uh, uh, when it comes to accurate history. I have a better understanding of the situation with Iran than I did years ago. I never wanted war with Iran, but I always thought, man, they're that government is so mean, so terrible. And as I said, I still am not a fan of the government. I mean, left wing parties have been suppressed. They execute homosexuals and lesbians in the country, or if they don't execute them, they give them the option of of of, of sex changes, to which is cruel if that's not what you want. So I mean, I'm not a fan of the government of Iran, but I'm also not a fan of the United States foreign policy either, and the military industrial complex in the United States, and the evangelical Christian fundamentalists that want to invoke their interpretation of Scripture into U.S. foreign policy and have it wedged in there is a dangerous recipe for disaster. On September 9th, 2015, there was a protest rally by the Tea Party Patriots, and you had people like Glenn Beck and Michelle Bachmann and Mark Levin, if I remember correctly, Sarah Palin and Phil Robertson from what's the name of the Duck Dynasty, and it's morons like that that made the peace deal look more attractive. You couldn't find a better incentive to embrace the theory, the treaty, than to have jerks like Glenn Beck and Phil Robertson and people like uh, Mark Levin and Sarah Palin and Michelle Bachmann, who all of them are pro-war. They all supported the Bush Cheney foreign policy that got us into the mess that we're in right now. And for all the people who are tired of war, even some conservatives said they're tired of war, but you got to watch out which sections of conservatives. When Rand Paul said he's tired of war, I take him at his word, because as much disagreements I have with Rand Paul, and Rand Paul's got a lot of things that I disagree with, especially in terms of domestic issues politically. But the man opposed the military industrial complex, and he opposed the U.S. meddling in around the world. And even some Republican lawmakers were pissed off that when Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the both sessions of Congress, what was it, back in 2011, 2012, something like that, which was a way it was a way just to slap Obama in the face, and to try to put a stop to this Iran treaty, um, because his applause to Benjamin Netanyahu was lukewarm at best. He didn't show a lot of emotion. They acted like, oh, how dare you go and disrespect Phil? Why don't you just go and bow down toward him? And many of these damn right wing Republicans look at Benjamin Netanyahu and they act like he's the second coming of Christ, but talk shit about Pope Francis. Sadly, some of these folks that talk shit about Pope Francis on the right are Republicans themselves. We're Catholic Republicans. What the fuck is wrong with you? So, I mean, all just to be partisan and to get your partisan point across, you'll jeopardize the peace of the world just to go own liberals. Trump walked out of this treaty just to appeal to the very people, the very base of people, the very faction, political faction of this country that has actually been a monkey wrench toward progress in this country, domestically and internationally, and in our damn culture wars within this country right now. We need to go back to this treaty because let me tell you, this Iran treaty, the United States and Iran going back to this peace treaty, I believe that Iran on their own will evolve into a Western democracy. Not with the United States bullying them around. And people think, oh, well, Iran, terrorism. Iran commits very little terrorism against the West. The country that you want to blame a country that commits terrorism against the West, that would be Saudi Arabia, not Iran. Most of the people involved with 9/11 were connected with Saudi Arabia. I mean, and there's more secularism even within the government of Iran than a Sharia place like Saudi Arabia. But people are very ignorant about this sort of thing. And they think that the entire region of the Middle East is monolithic, just, united movement and this caliphate. And there's no caliphate because to have a caliphate that people like Glenn Beck used to frighten people about on his silly show would mean that you have to go and unite all these factions together. They don't even like each other. How the hell can they successfully take over the West? It just can't happen. Well, suffice to say, I am glad that Joe Biden is, for change, is going to do something positive, and that is to return the United States back into the peace deal with Iran. It was absolute insanity to walk away from this treaty. It was the best thing Obama done, the worst thing Trump done, and it might just be the best thing that Biden will be doing right now until he ends up serving either the next 4 years, 3 years at this, the next 4 years, or 8 years, or if it gets somehow um, Harris steps in for whatever reason, if Biden steps down and resign, I would be glad to see the United States return to sanity and to get away from not just jeopardizing a country across the world, but jeopardizing our own safety just to appeal to religious fanatics, the military-industrial complex, and and to the establishment buffoons from both parties. That's my take on it. So, if you like what you heard, press like and comment. If you disagree with me, that's okay. We'll have a conversation. And as a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create a platform and utilize it because we're the muckrakers of our time. Feel free to also subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell and share the information if you would. And until next time, I am American Social Democracy. Peace. Class warfare yesterday, class warfare today, class warfare tomorrow, until we have full economic and social justice for all.